Hello, hello. As promised, today is Thursday, and I'm going to do a reading. So this is chapter one, which I think will kind of help people who are perhaps a bit unsure. Perhaps that's a few people. Um, they'll start to perhaps get a gist of the book and the story and how it's going to kind of go. Um, there is an introductory part in the book that leads on to chapter one. I'll save people who purchase the book can can read that. But yeah, here goes. Here's chapter one. So chapter one, 24th of February, leaving day. We sat looking at the flat fenlands from the living room window, light refracting to illuminate the world into our eyes, passing from the dead, frosty wilderness of outside and into the warm orange glow of the living room where we sat on the couch with hot drinks and a freshly fueled log fire burning and cracking. The ground frost hadn't shifted for a few days, and the cold had continually set in whenever a thaw started to come over. Daisy's parents came outside to wave us off. Daisy's mum set us off with preparations of vegetarian sausage and eggs with bread and nut roast sandwiches, fruit and chocolate bars. With the car packed, we set off in the crisp morning, hoping for better weather if nothing else. Daisy looked away with a succession of tears rolling down her cheeks as the figures of her waving parents fell further into the distance until we turned the corner. The electrics connecting the caravan lights to the car were temperamental, and it was unclear for the drive down to Portsmouth whether we had any rear lights at all. The lights cable didn't extend to the car from the caravan when we purchased it, so the seller had extended the cable by adding extra wire manually joined and wrapped up with conductor tape. The plan was hopefully to leave the caravan at the land, so all the caravan had to do was make it 600 miles to Malpica in Portugal, where it could live out the rest of its days in the sun. Where are we? We picked up Daisy's favourite road, the A1, took it for a little while before it became the M1, and then the M25 around London, then on to Portsmouth via the A3. We arrived in Portsmouth with good time, around 3 hours before the ferry was to depart. We parked widthways with the caravan across 6 car park spaces on an empty car park on the edge of Pompey. Daisy's friend Sienna met with us for a final send-off as she lived an hour away in Bournemouth. We had noodles and she gave us some gifts. A screen print she'd made of flowers in a vase in warm saturated terracotta colours. She also gave Daisy a necklace with a small tablet charm on it that had the expression, "Nevertheless, she persisted," an American feminist political quote. I was unclear what Daisy would need to persist with. Maybe it would be me. It turned out the caravan lights were still on the blink when we returned to the car, ready to be waved off by Sienna. Daisy gave the caravan cables one final shimmy wiggle, which led to a frustrated joy when the lights came back on. The electric current travelling through the wires must have been hanging on for dear life, as still the lights flickered, but we could worry about them once the ferry arrived in Santander. It was the archetypal final scene of wintry England. A cold, foggy night with lots of car lights, dressed down stress and darkness. We boarded the ferry and found our little cabin room, which had 4 fold-down beds, a small TV, and an ensuite bathroom, similar to the caravan bathroom, with a pokey economy of space feel. Daisy was sick on the ferry within half an hour of departure and retched in the toilet, or laid in prone position holding her stomach. We'd been on a few boats and she never enjoyed it, gripped with that fear of being in a small space without the ground under her feet, sailing on an endless sea. It was a 36-hour crossing, so it was a long time to go from the cabin to the top deck to watch the sea, then mill around the onboard bars around the boat, and then return to ask Daisy if she was okay, often waking her and making the whole deal for her worse by accident. Eventually, though, after some generic movies on the little TV and some of Daisy's mum's sandwiches, we saw the orange land emerge ahead of us, of Santander. As it got closer, we saw the crystal metropolis of the city. We moved closer and closer until we were gobbled up by the port. After customs, which proved to be 5 ambivalent Garda officers in a filthy-looking marquee chatting, we headed for the A67, which would get us on our way south. We stopped to refuel after an hour and noticed the caravan lights weren't working particularly well. Daisy tried her wire trick, and sometimes they worked and other times not. So we proceeded with lights that operated a bit like a fairground ride. We got back on the motorway and the Spanish police pulled on from a side ramp after a short while. They followed us for a bit. Fortunately, it was just before midnight and we didn't have just before midday, and we didn't have much reason to use the lights. I stayed in the slow lane and hoped they'd go by. I could see them in my rearview mirror having some sort of discussion about whether they could fit us for any sort of lucrative crime. But probably they couldn't be bothered with the paperwork, so they overtook us and pretended to get paid somewhere else. Daisy played the Gorillaz' new album Cracker Island when we were settled into the drive, which had been released that day. We just passed Salamanca when we had our first stop. We ate pies after gesturing with the non-English speaking lady behind the counter, pointing her along the hot counter like her hands were a grab claw machine. We guessed we would have similar experiences for the next 3 months. Everything was going smoothly. I'd quickly got used to driving on the right side. We saw the whole climatic span on the way down, from the icy mountains of Cantabria, where snow adorned the peaks, through to the green tablelands where corn and maize grew infinitely to the horizon. The caravan was gripping the road nicely. There was a certain pull if you went beyond 80 miles per hour, which I would do from time to time, impatient by the straight nothingness monoculture of central Spanish roads. We passed into Portugal without really noticing. The signs started probably 100 kilometres from the border, and then without much warning, we passed by a border town, and then the language suddenly laid itself out in Portuguese. Portugal was more enclosed and less developed. Still the Iberian Peninsula, so effectively the same land, but the broom bushes and various scrub plants had been left to grow into the wild abandon of the landscape. The same land, more or less, on the Spanish side is committed to improved road schemes and intensive agriculture. There was another few hours of driving to get to the land. Something else we noticed with Portugal was that the distances passed much more slowly, seeing as the roads changed from Spanish highway to windy Portuguese arteries drawn haphazardly through the small towns and villages in slaloms and chicanes. Portugal had a motorway network, but these were toll roads we thought best to avoid. The roads in both Spain and Portugal were virtually dead. It was a profound difference. The M25 around London must have several crashes per day related to the constant congestion, but we hadn't encountered a single busy road since getting off the ferry in Santander. It was like there was no one around. It was strange how the sense of England's population was only self-evident once you left it. I'd been to Portugal a few times before, and it was always reassuringly frozen in ice and sparsely populated, especially the interior of the country, which was largely vast empty spaces with farms, rustic overgrown lands or villages full of old people gathered in the streets staring out. The metabolism of the place so unhurried and unchanged. And that's the end of chapter 1. Stay tuned for more stuff coming up to sort of entice you with regards to the book. But that's all for now. In the coming days, I want to release some of the pictures. The only picture so far is the old ferry, as us going up on the ferry. So the pictures are each chapter has a picture related to the chapter. And then there's sporadically, probably a couple of times a chapter on average. There's then the pictures that Con drew during the trip. Anyway, that's all for now. Thanks for sharing this 10 minutes with me to get the book kicked off. There'll be more teasers in the coming weeks. Before, like I say, I'm still on course really to release the book the start of December. I mean, I think the big thing is kind of yeah, getting the interest, and then it'll be available to purchase. I mean, local purchases I could probably hand deliver, or I can post. People further afield, I can post it as a large letter. I've kind of gradually working on that side of things too. But anyway, that's all for now. 11 minutes of your time. Bye for now.